Okay, hi everyone. I just want to say hello, introduce myself. I'm Misty. This is the Shakopee Diversity Alliance, a school to prison pipeline webinar. We are doing this in support of Black History Month to address issues that affect Black and Brown communities and things that we can do to make it better, or ways that we can listen or help or provide support, just especially during Black History Month. SDA is a diverse group of people who supports Black and Brown people in our community, either through resources, information, or just community. We have a very diverse group of people, and hopefully we can grow that as we continue to grow as a group. We have two fantastic sponsors. We have St. Francis, who's helping sponsor these events, and Old National Bank. Also, again, with that, we are a donation-based business just because we are small. And so anybody who feels called to give, please do that. I'm going to go ahead and let Rich introduce Dr. Moss to the group, and thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Stevens. For transparency, I would like to let everyone know that I do know Dr. Ray Moss. I work with him in Ramsey County. Dr. Ray Moss received his doctorate in public administration from Capella University in 2018. Dr. Moss is currently the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Coordinator for Ramsey County, and he is also serves as the Executive Director for the Carl Moss Institute located in St. Paul, Minnesota, which provides culturally specific criminal justice reform programming to the African American community. Dr. Moss has formerly worked as a lead probation/parole agent for the Michigan Department of Correction, and he has taught in the undergraduate programs, which is focused on criminal justice at South University Nova, which is located in Nova, Michigan, and Baker College, which is located in Allen Park, Michigan, and Henry Ford Community College, which is located in Dearborn, Michigan. Dr. Moss is also a proud member of the Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. Dr. Moss, would you please share some words of wisdom with us?
What up, though, everybody? That's what we like to say where I'm from. I hope everybody having a great evening, and I'm looking forward to a deep conversation and a lot of learning, and hopefully folks can feel a little uncomfortable so we can grow tonight.
Dr. Moss, are you ready for me to start your slide presentation?
Yeah, please, please. Yeah. Appreciate it. Rich, you can go right to the next slide. And what I like to do anytime I speak or meet with folks, I like to center the work. And today I like to center the work around a quote from one of my favorite people in the world, Dr. Cornel West. To be human, you must bear witness to justice. Justice is what love looks like in public. Again, justice is what love looks like in public. As Rich know, I like to do, if a few people don't mind reflecting on that quote and let me know what that says to you or what it means to you. If you guys call on 4 or 5 people before we move on. Anybody raise their hand or anybody want to speak up?
Any attendees that want to raise their hand, if you'd like to click on that, I will allow you to talk and turn your microphone on. Dr. Moss, at this time, we don't have anybody.
Oh, well, I usually be like a teacher and call on somebody. If you guys, one of you guys can definitely reflect on it. That's on the panel. Heidi, Misty.
I first of all, that's an excellent quote. I love it. I think I'm going to put that on my wall somewhere so my kids can see that every day. So I'm going to speak to it from a racism standpoint. Justice is when your child says something to a friend who makes fun of someone else.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Heidi?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it from a teacher's perspective and teaching primary age, kindergarten and first graders and how they're treating each other. And the difference between walking into a classroom and welcoming everybody as a friend versus choosing specific kids.
I appreciate it. Anna, then Whitley, then we'll move on into the presentation.
Did you say Anna?
Yeah, Anna, yep, then Whitley, yep.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's being actively anti-racist. I think today there's a lot of people that have kind of, you know, in a way been forced to speak up on these topics, but we need to do better and be ahead of the ball. And that comes with education, and having these, you know, discussions like this, and not leaving it up to like people in Minneapolis to, you know, host stuff, but like, you know, being active within our local community. Like, what are we doing here in Shakopee, you know, to love on our community and be anti-racist. So
Appreciate that. Thank you. Whitley?
Yeah, just kind of reflecting on the quote that's provided here is, you know, justice is what love looks like in public. What that says to me is really speaking and acting with your heart, in everything that you do, reflecting on, you know, how do I feel? How do I think the other individual would feel if I was being, you know, talked to in such a way, if I was experiencing an way. So I really think it's action, but action based on, you know, your heart and feelings, really.
No, I appreciate that, Willie. And you know, this quote always speaks to me because I'm deeply involved in criminal justice reform work. That's my life mission, is to abolish the criminal justice system and rebuild it in the image of folks most impacted. So when I see this quote, it's just basically leading with love. Just imagine what the justice system looked like if everybody did things from a place of love with passion. Outcomes be a lot different because, as you guys know, how you love on family members, you want the best for those family members. So if we could do that the same thing in the justice system, the outcomes would be a lot better and it'd be a lot less more disparities. Rich, you can thanks for reflecting, guys. So I appreciate it. Rich, you can move right on along into the presentation. Heidi, do me a favor. If you can, turn off everybody cam, and I want everybody to close their eyes, if possible. Or everybody can do it.
Turn your own off.
Appreciate it. All right, guys, I want you guys to imagine a child born to a mother that was molested, raped, and kicked out the house before the age of 16 and left to defend on her own. That same child was fatherless and lost majority of the male role models in his life to the war on drugs. That same child was reared in an environment fueled by the selling of drugs by his mother and fraud in the welfare system just to make ends meet. At the same time, that child had a sibling that experienced the exact same plight. However, he suffered from ADHD. That same sibling was lost to the juvenile justice system due to zero tolerance policies that put him into placements, or as I like to refer, displaced him from his family. That same child experienced terrible trauma due to his death. Before that child graduated junior high school, he lost that same sibling to gun violence. That child experienced terrible trauma due to the death of his brother. He also suffered from various learning disabilities that made him struggle just to be a C student. Before that child graduated high school, he became a father his junior year. And Rich and Heidi, you guys can turn on back everybody monitor. I just want to ask you guys, what you think happened to that child? If anybody can speak up.
I'm going to take a wild guess and say he ended up in the prison system.
Okay. Anybody else? A few more folks. Misty.
I believe he's speaking to us right now. Is his name Dr. Moss?
That is right. But Heidi, you was right on point. What makes my situation different, that you guys are gonna learn as we go through this presentation, me and my brother that passed away experienced the exact same situation, growing up same plight, but early on in my life, I had a mentor enter my life at an early age that helped me kind of change my trajectory into where I'm at today and not go down the same path as my brother. So I just kind of want to ground us in that thought, and just my story is common to every Black and brown folk that's going in these school systems. So it's nothing unusual. It's just people in their life that can help change that path. Rich, you can go right into the presentation, the school to prison pipeline. Oh, am I freezing? I might be lagging. No? Okay. The school to prison pipeline refers to Rich, one more slide back. I'm sorry. Yeah. The school to prison pipeline refers to policies and practices that push children, especially minorities, out of the school and into the juvenile and criminal justice system. Next slide, Rich. Who is being funneled into the pipeline? Youth of color, English language learners, physically disabled youth, youth with learning disabilities, gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender students, undocumented youth, homeless, or foster children. Next slide, Rich. As you guys can see from this chart, it's almost a highway. As you can see early on in the highway, at number 1, to say arrest is by police. So you can see a child can easily enter into the juvenile justice system just by a simple referral. And as you guys can see from the other boxes, his outcomes is very bleak. His or her outcomes are very bleak just to get, once they get that referral and start their path into the juvenile justice system. Next slide, Rich. Hit this video for me and play it. I think you might have to go forward and go back because and go back, it should play. Yeah, I think it's spinning.
Does it work to click the link below?
I think it's still thinking.
I wonder if you have to stop presenting and, you know, click the control button on your keyboard and then click the link. For folks tuning in, just give us a couple minutes here. We're trying to play a video. You know, we're all new at Zoom here.
Nope, it's still just thinking.
Hey, Rich, if you want to get the link, it's a link in the if you look at the PowerPoint slides, it should be a link. You might want to grab that to store it in your browser.
I will do that. Yeah, though the link did not come up. Oh, it did. Sorry, I have it now. It's a YouTube video. And that is the reason why it's not working on my browser, is because this is a county computer. Don't tell them, Ray.
Oh. If you want to make me host real quick, I probably can play it.
I have it up right now. I'm just going to share my screen again.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
And Dr. Moss, if at any point you do decide to have that hosting right, you do have the availability right now.
Okay. I don't think the volume playing, Rich, might not be.
So we can't hear the audio, Rich.
I hear the audio on my end.
It's no biggie, Rich. Let's continue with the presentation. I kind of frame the video. I can try to share it on my end too, so it might play
Okay.
a little bit better. Let me see real quick. Can you guys see that? No? Can you see the video about to play?
We can see the slide. We can't see the video. I think you need to end the slideshow if you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Can you guys hear that? All right. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Basically, that video was saying, oh boy. So basically, the video was saying, a student of color got suspended from school for having a hit list that he developed just out of spite, but it was nothing really mean behind it, malicious. So the teacher came up to him while he was in school because him and the other guy was playing over the list, and she took the list from him, and that hit list got him suspended, expelled from school from a year. And that child, he was a decent student, and he suffered from a lot of trauma, a lot of other things just for being expelled from school. He felt alienated from his friends. He couldn't play football. And this is all just from that little hit list that he created that he had no ambition on acting on or nothing like that. It's just something done with a friend. So they took it to the extent, and to this day, he's still suffering from the trauma of being expelled from school for an entire year and then trying to catch back up once he got into school. So I kind of wanted to reference that and just kind of give you guys the example of Black and brown people they go through every day in these school systems. Student of color, I'm sorry, can you guys still see the slides? Okay. Students of color face harsher discipline and are more likely to be pushed out than whites. 40% of students expelled from U.S. schools each year are Black. 70% of those students involved in in-school arrests are referred to by the police are Black and Latinx. Black students are 3.5 times more likely than white students to be suspended. What are the factors that contribute to the school to prison pipeline? The test prep culture. The No Child Left Behind Act utilizes standardized test scores to determine the overall performance of the school and district. Schools participate in push-out policies to reshape the test and pool. Folks fail to realize that standardized tests put a bunch of people in the same pot, regardless of their scores. So everything being equal, you and I can be both just as smart, but if you have better test prep than I do, you're gonna score a lot better at that test, and that test is gonna determine a lot for that person taking the test, as far as where they're gonna be placed at in school, what type of remedial class they might get. So it's a lot placed on that standardized test that folks don't realize, as well as being culturally biased. Zero tolerance policies that take away discretion. Any violation, no matter how minor, will result in suspension, expulsion, or arrest. Violations are no longer examined on a case-by-case bias, but more of a one-size-fits-all model. Suspension and expulsions. Poor performing students receive longer suspensions or more expulsions than better performing students. The punishment gap grew significantly during test administration periods. So basically, students that might feel some type of way about taking tests seem to get disciplined a lot more during that time period of taking the test. Criminalizing school misconduct. School-based arrests double the odds of that student will drop out of school. When coupled with a court appearance, the odds of dropping out quadruple. School-based arrests lower job prospects and increase the likelihood of future contact with the criminal justice system. And this is all referring to Black and brown students. Criminalization of normative adolescent behavior. I know some of you guys might be into the educators yourself. You know, a child or a young person gonna act like a young person. So pushing and shoving, minor theft like swiping headphones, talking back, simple battery, maybe getting in a fight with somebody, not involving a weapon, theft or robbery or disorderly conduct are things that's being normalized as adolescent behavior, but being criminalized with a lot of this school to prison pipeline. And when you think about that too, I had the opportunity to visit a level 4 school in Ramsey County, and I ran into a kid on his way out being arrested by SRO officers. You know, he was really unruly, he was upset, and I asked him, you know, can I speak to him for a second just to calm him down because I didn't want to see nothing bad happen to him. As I was talking to him along while he was handcuffed, you know, I asked him what happened, and, you know, the officer said he was being arrested for disorderly conduct. So, you know, basically I know what disorderly conduct is from being a probation pro officer. So I'm saying basically we're arresting this kid for being a youth. So being loud and boisterous, I don't know what youth is not loud and boisterous, but further investigation as I'm talking to this youth, he's a youth of color. He's telling me that he'd rather go to the JDC, which is a juvenile detention facility in Ramsey County, instead of being surrounded by these white folks and police officers all day that don't understand them. So with that said, it speaks a lot to the lack of culture in these schools and the lack of understanding of kids of color that folks can't relate and they feel like they don't have an outlet. As you guys see, racial and ethnic disparities: for every one white student to receive out of school suspension, 3 Black students receive an out of school suspension. Major trends: police presence in schools has been on the rise, especially in the last 15 years. More types of incidents now require police notification. State and federal funding for cops in schools has expanded. Many zero tolerance policies has broadened the definition of weapon. Types of security in the schools: school police officers, typically sworn police officers on the staff of a district. School resource officer or SRO, typically a sworn police officer of an outside agency assigned to the school full time. Other folks that could be in the school are non-security. Security folks, school staff, or private firm contracted staff who do not have the police powers. Most significant from all these folks is the power to arrest, detain, interrogate, and issue citations. Who is graduating from high school? Black and Latinx students are twice as likely to not graduate high school as whites. 68% of all males in state and federal prison do not have a high school diploma. Why should administrators care? If school officials are effectively denying minority students educational access, they're in violation of the U.S. Constitution. Attorneys have been successfully in litigating such lawsuits because push-out practices represent a clear violation of equal protection. Push-out policies set students up for a lifetime of failure and cost U.S. taxpayers billions of dollars annually. Now to the big question: how can we disrupt the pipeline? Provide better training for educators in classroom management, as well as make sure we get teachers of color in school. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a stat that's out there, but it said that if a Black student before 3rd grade have a Black educator in his life, they are 38% more likely to graduate high school. That's powerful in itself, because what is that saying is that it's lack of representation in these school systems. So when I go to school with folks that look like me, they don't see other folks in front of them. Eliminate standardized tests as the indicator of school and district performance. Use a combination of factors. This speaks to teach kids conflict resolution skills, which also is a missing component of anti-bullying campaigns. And we need to get more to restorative justice practices. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Just more of a circle process where we involve community instead of involving law enforcement. So with those restorative justice practices, we can keep everything in-house and not have to send a youth through that criminal justice system just to get some simple disciplinary actions. Again, how can we disrupt the pipeline, reduce the number of suspension and expulsions? If suspensions is warranted, use in-school suspension so that students do not fall behind in their work. If expulsion is necessary, help students locate a GED program or skills trades program. Again, eliminate zero tolerant policies for minor rule violations. As we spoke about earlier, for a good example was disorderly conduct. Eliminate the criminalization of school misconduct and do not use school resource officers as enforcers. I know it's a big debate on if we should keep SROs in the schools. I'm on the side of the fence, say no. I grew up in the Black community. I understand the traumatization that comes from that uniform. To everybody in my generation, throughout my family. So do I believe there's better ways? Yes. If we know we need to get more Black and brown folks in these schools, there's better ways we can do that. We can get social workers in the school working instead of SROs. We can get things called credible messengers in the schools. I don't know if you guys are familiar with credible messengers, but there are people with lived experience, maybe just as involved, that's come from the community that look just like those students in the school who may be having similar problems that can relate to. It could be an instant rapport. Good thing about credible messengers, they've been through the same thing that student has. And that's somebody that can rely on every day in that school to see them a common familiar face from the community. So they can help them with a lot of those administration problems that you see teachers might have, and they might lean on that SRO in that school. Now they can lean on that credible messenger. Hey, Mr. So-and-so, can you come in the classroom and talk to Jamal? He's having some issues today. That credible messenger will have instant rapport with that young person. That way he can sit down and have a conversation with Jamal, and try to de-escalate a lot of stuff that's been going on that day. Because folks don't realize, like, a lot of these kids have problems that happens before they walk into that school. Lord knows we don't know what's going on at home, if he's not eating, if his clothes not clean, if his mom or dad might have went to jail that prior night. It's so many factors going into school that day that folks fail to realize that can escalate a child easily going into that pipeline. I see your hand, Anna. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm not a teacher, so all the abbreviations, I don't understand them super well. But
Okay.
I know that we have a ton of educators on here. I know that you mentioned like a third party, like social workers instead of cops, but for teachers that are listening right now, are there any effective strategies that you recommend that they can actively take if someone is being a little disruptive in class or et cetera?
No problem. Yeah, first of all, big up to all the educators on this Zoom tonight. Definitely appreciate you. But what I recommend is what you see too often, what I see in my line of work is that usually if an SRO is in the school, a school resource officer or a police officer, I'm sorry for the abbreviations, that teachers tend to lean on them for simple administrative type issues. So once that SRO gets involved with the issue, it escalates to maybe a citation or maybe that student getting arrested. So if we go back, if we eliminate the SRO, everything is handled in-house. If we have a credible messenger in the school, they can come and work with that youth. If we have social workers in the school, they can come work with that youth. If that youth come to school that day with some issue that happened the night prior, they can go to that social worker or credible messenger and talk to them before something so simple can escalate to something big in school that day. Because like I said, we never know what a student go to once they leave that school. It can be lack of meals. Somebody can be getting, anything can happen. A number of things can happen. So we never know, but we need to make sure we safeguard that student, put things in place, eliminate barriers so he can be successful in school and having people he can talk to and relate to. Kevin, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you, Dr. Moss. You mentioned a lot of statistics on the
Mhm.
school to prison pipeline that apply to African-American males. Do these numbers correspond equally well to African-American females as far as the likelihood that an African-American young woman will go to prison if she is processed through the detention to prison pipeline, or if African-American woman does not have a Black teacher, male or female, in her life early on, and so forth? Do these numbers correspond to Black
Yeah,
women as well?
the data mirror each other. Yeah, folks of color, basically, the data mirror each other. That's like male or female, Latinx, Black, and brown. So yeah, it does, Kevin.
Okay, just wondering.
No problem. Appreciate you asking that.
Dr. Moss, you do have a question. The question is, are there local school districts or other agencies that have implemented credible messenger programs? And this question comes from Suzanne.
How you doing, Suzanne? Yeah, it's really big on the East Coast. They do a lot of credible messenger work in the DC area and the New York area. So they have seen tremendous success with the credible messenger. So most definitely.
Dr. Mass, I have a question too.
Go ahead.
Do you believe there are institutionalized reasons that there aren't more people of color becoming teachers in the first place?
Yeah, I had this discussion with somebody the other day. I know a lot of folks that are educated, would love to work in schools, but do they really want to go back to school to get a teacher certificate? I mean, after they've been 4 or 5 years in school, but they highly just as can walk in that school and help somebody out. So I just think it's a lot of barriers to folks of color actually getting into school and actually teaching. I know they want to teach, but it's just so many barriers up that it makes it very hard to get in that school and actually, want to be an educator.
And I can elaborate about that a little bit. My name is Rich Stevens, and I served 32 years in the military, and I have a master's degree. And I tried to get into to be a teacher, and they told me I would have to go back to school for 2 more years, plus do additional 1.5 years of student teaching before I can be a certified teacher. If I joined the Troops to Teacher program, if your district sponsored it, it would be about 2 years and additional time for me to go back to school, even someone with my level of education and experience.
Yeah, and I think that experience is common. You hear a lot of folks of color say the same thing. I know a lot of brothers who's been just as involved and who moved on with their life and actually have a 4-year degree who would love to teach and go back to school, and they have nonviolent felonies, but it's so many barriers in place that makes it impossible for them to get into school and actually give back and teach.
And Dr. Mass, Stephanie has a question. And Stephanie, I'm going to go ahead and give you an opportunity to unmute yourself. If you want to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Hello.
How you doing, Stephanie?
Oh, hey, how you doing? I actually don't have a question. I just have a comment that kind of goes with the teacher thing, because I think a lot of people don't realize that during integration, when the schools were integrated, of course, the government kind of had to force that to happen. But a lot of people don't realize that a lot of Black teachers lost their jobs around that time, because although they would let the schools in, they still would not hire Black teachers. And so unemployment for teachers then was Black teachers was really, really high, and it has never really recovered since then. And it's very easy, like, for you to get into a profession that you see your parents doing or your grandparents doing. But if you have this big gap in Black history where Black teachers were not getting jobs, it's gonna ripple down to now you have your kids or your grandkids not really interested in that field because Black teachers were out of work for a very long time. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks, sir. I appreciate that. You educated me tonight. I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
I think those were all the questions. Oh, no, there's one from Jolie.
Yeah, and we have 2 people with their hands raised.
Misty or Heidi, do you want to?
Yeah,
ask
the
the
first question is for from Jolie, and hello, Jolie, by the way, thank you for joining us. Is there any new resources that are available to students to help keep them in school to graduation with the pandemic in place, and how easy is it to get the off task? Meaning, like, with the barrier now of the pandemic, we all know that Black and Brown students are being disproportionately affected. So how do we get them back on track and get them to graduation and to be successful?
I couldn't answer that per se, but I think each jurisdiction has something different maybe going on, and I don't know if anybody on the call can speak to that. Well, I can speak to, I know in Ramsey, I'm sorry, Heidi. Ramsey, I know some of the resources they provide. And I work with a number of community-based organizations that making sure we provide Chromebooks to youth who may be in the system, and make sure they have Chromebooks to attend school, and make sure they have Wi-Fi access. So those are some of the barriers we doing knocking down right now, as well as giving out small grants to families in need if they meet the criteria, if they on some type of social services, or if they on the juvenile justice side. We giving out small grants to help pay for rent, clothes, food, shelter, and things of that nature. That's just in Ramsey County Pacific. I couldn't speak to what's going on in these other jurisdictions.
Okay,
I do-
thank you, Dr. Boss. This question is from Jake. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It says, where are the stats in the presentation looking at students in Minnesota or the whole country? So are your stats local? Or are they just Minnesota?
Nationwide.
Nationwide, okay.
And Misty, we do have somebody raising their hand, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow that person to talk. If you want to ask your question, you can unmute yourself when you're ready.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool. My name's Aijane. I'm a student at Shakopee High School, and I'd like to pursue a career of law later on in life. But I come from if I were to pursue that, I would be the first generation in my family to pursue college and go out and pursue a degree. And I just wanted to know, like, seeing so many like educated Black people who have found success despite challenges. Do you have any tips? And also, how did you stay motivated? Because I know in my own personal experience, I feel like, especially with the law and legal course of like action, that a lot of schools and systems push back against me, like getting to that point. Like, it's not very easy for people who haven't had like previous lawyers in their family to like pursue law, because other people would get like different benefits than I would. And I know a lot of people would like disagree and like bank on affirmative action, but I don't even think that's truly like something that aids like Black youth who want to pursue more prestigious careers.
Oh, that's super dope. I'm so happy you're pursuing that career. I definitely don't give up, and I would love to be a resource for you. So after this call, maybe I can give you my email. You can make sure you can stay in touch with me. It's gonna be tough. It's a lot of barriers put up to keep Black and brown folks from getting ahead. Systemic racism, white privilege. It's a lot of things you're gonna encounter that you just got to be stronger than and make sure you get through. Just speaking on my personal experience being a Black man at tables where I make folks uncomfortable, where I might be the content expert, but still my truth makes them uncomfortable, and that tends for them not to listen. It's hard, but you still got to push on. You got to be strategic. You got to be authentic, and don't lose your voice. Don't never dummy down your message, because at the end of the day, we trying to do this greater than us. It's a generation of people in front of me and behind me that I got to do this work for. It's my passion, so I definitely won't give up. You can do it. It's achievable. Like I said, I had a small learning disability, and I got a doctorate now, so anything's possible. I mean, I've been through a lot. Had kids in high school, still push forward, so it's possible. It's more than possible. So I'm happy you want to pursue a career in law, because we need more lawyers like you at the table to push a Black agenda forward, and I think it's super dope. So please definitely reach out to me if you get a chance. And anybody else definitely want to give her some words of encouragement?
This is just speaking from a very, very narrow perspective. I actually worked in law enforcement. I worked for the sheriff's department in a different life a long time ago. And this was back when I was the only Black kid in class, and it wasn't easy, but I just stayed on that grind. I worked hard, I paid for it. And you know what? People are going to say those things about being that affirmative action hire, but rock that, be the best that you can be at that. And it's going to be a ton of obstacles, especially as a female. Oh, there is going to be additional obstacles, because a female in the law is just tough work. Keep doing it, stick with it. And there will be people out there, Dr. Moss, Rich, myself, that have been there. So reach out, ask for help. You have that support. You have a whole team of people that are willing to support you.
I'd like to make a comment. So, hi, I'm the president of Shakopee Diversity Alliance. We do have some connections with the University of St. Thomas. The woman who runs their it's like a race and culture center. We've connected with her, and she's super passionate about getting more Black folks into law. So we'd love, we'll connect with you after this. I was also going to mention with law, one, it's hard to get to being a lawyer, but you'll have to keep in mind, I worked at the Minnesota Attorney General's office. I work with law all the time with the Minnesota Department of Labor, and laws fail people of color like pretty badly. Just because sometimes something might be the law, it doesn't mean it's actually like justice. And I think you'll, you know, through school and reading, you'll end up realizing those things, but just something to keep in mind as you're pursuing this career. It's worthwhile and it's also really tough. So, but that shouldn't discourage you because it's good work. I'm just sharing, you know, some of what I've seen as a person of color and, you know, Minnesota Attorney General's office, these different government agencies, et cetera. But we'll connect.
Someone also told her to be who you are always. And Dr. Moss, there was a question from Jake. So if we can, if he wants to unmute himself, he can go ahead and ask his question. I didn't catch it before it got taken.
I think I seen it, Jake. I think I seen it. Yeah, can you unmute yourself and ask it again, if possible? Okay, I think Jake said something.
I have it too, Dr. Moss.
Okay.
I don't know if you can hear me okay.
Yeah,
But Jake had stated, Dr. Moss, what is the best piece of advice to give to white teachers to best support Black and Brown students?
Oh, great question. Happy you asked it. I think one of the things that's powerful is recognize your white privilege when you walk in the room. Recognize that you're privileged when you walk in that room with students of color. And also, I think it need to be more culturally specific curriculum in schools. Too often, the Black story get whitewashed, and a lot of times Black folks don't really understand their history, and it's not taught at a level that it needs to be taught at. I can say that happened to me a lot of times. I really didn't learn about my people until after college, or until when I went to college. You know, it was more so on a Christopher Columbus scale, and a lot of just, you know, minimizing slavery and not really saying the importance that Black roles that Black folks played in this country and getting us to where we're at now, Black and Brown folks as well. So I think if you can find some type of culturally specific curriculum out there, push that. I know I'm helping the school within Metro Detroit, helping students learn about civil unrest, because it's never too early to learn about protesting and your rights and people that came before you. So that's one of the things I really love doing, is giving back to these young students in middle school, teaching them how to protest, teaching them why the civil unrest is happening. So things of that nature, just being current and never be too afraid to not be yourself, but, you know, lean on hip hop. Hip hop is $1 billion a year industry. It influences a lot. So just be familiar, you know, build rapport with your students. Don't be too far removed and not know what they listening to every day, what they doing or what they involved in. I think we got some more questions. And
I have a person with their hand raised, so I'm going to allow that person to talk if they want to unmute themselves and go ahead and ask your question.
I didn't have a question, but I wanted to say that I'm a part of ethnic studies. Like, it's a coalition. They're trying to pass bills to have like more, they teach about like past histories that like people don't really know about, like people of color, they talk about that. And so they're trying to pass bills so that it's included in the curriculum. So I was wondering if like the person previously who just asked a question, if they want to like perhaps learn about that more, so then they can try to teach that with their curriculum if they wanted to.
no, that sounds great. I'll definitely learn more about that resource if possible. I don't know if I can follow back up with you. Also quick, I mean, I know a lot of times when I have young folks, I'm trying to teach more about our culture. You know, I like to always play William Gates, Dr. Henry Gates, I'm sorry, Black in Latin America. It's a great docu-series. It's been out for a long time, but it really showed the travels from Africa to all these different countries. And a lot of Black folks don't even know that, you know, Black folks was dropped off in Brazil, Black folks was dropped off in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, and, you know, all these other countries that they didn't know about. So it's kind of an eye opener. They help them learn a lot real fast and kind of get them really want to go down that path and learn more about their history.
Dr. Moss, this isn't for you. This is to connect Jack and Jake, it looks like.
Okay.
Jake is telling Jack that they can connect at school this week to give him more resources. So hopefully you guys can connect. And the other question is, I don't want to say your name incorrectly, so I'm just going to not say the name. What's your best advice to create pipeline to fill corporate jobs?
I think I know where she's going.
Yep.
I think my advice is just to infuse people. If you're definitely talking about Black and Brown youth and young folks, get people in their school that look like them, that actually is educated and can speak to their experiences. So the more times people of color see people that look like them in higher roles, it helps out a lot. It motivates them. It helps them get to a point to understand that, you know, it's greater things they aspire to than being a rapper and a professional football or basketball player. There's so many more careers that's rewarding. It's just reaching out to those folks. They're in the community. They're out there. It's just reaching out and, you know, breaking down those barriers and letting them in the school, because too often these barriers in the school system is, you know, a lot of folks that want to be in the school, they can't get in there. They just don't have access like they need to.
Dr. Moss.
I have
don't
one
see any-
comment.
Go ahead. Wait, sorry, go
I
ahead.
have
Anna.
one comment of something that teachers can actively do. You know, if students are first generation, or I know for me, I didn't know anyone that had a bachelor's, much less a master's in my life, like women leaders around me. And so, you know, you as teachers, you have these degrees, you have a network. So I would just actively talk to your students and see if there's anyone in your network doing the work that they're trying to pursue that you can connect them with to be more successful with, you know, their journey. That's huge. That will help them a million.
I'm about to put up my information as well too. So you guys, if you guys want to reach out, feel free to email me, text me, and any type of resource I can provide, please reach out and I'll help you, especially with mentors. Kevin, go ahead.
Whoops. Yes, Dr. Moss, thank you. My question is, when we talk about this phenomenon of criminalizing normal youthful behavior, like talking back or just roughhousing or things like that are seen as being violence, I mean, we talk about that, but what really has to happen to make those changes possible at a district level, at a city level, at a state level? How do you go about on a state level non-criminalizing just a kid being a kid, essentially? I mean, where does it start? I mean, does it start with the individual school? Do you have to go to the school board for a particular city? Do you go to the state school board? I mean, where do you begin? Do you even change those policies?
Great question. Appreciate that, Kevin. What I always tell folks, it's a thin line between practices and policies. A lot of times, practice has been done so much that people actually think it's a policy. And when you start to take a deep dive, you can really start to separate to see if that's just a practice or a policy. A practice can change overnight. A policy might be a little bit harder, but those practices be the small steps to wholesale change that we're looking for. And to be honest, Kevin, I hate to be an abolitionist, not really, but it's going to take abolishment. A lot of these systems, they have to be deconstructed and reconstructed by folks most impacted. You know, folks always say reform. You can't reform nothing that's broken. So we have to, you know, transform and abolish and recreate. But definitely, you know, start off with the practice that you guys think can change, and then start leaning on policies and figure out you can go from there. But I always like to start with practices, because sometimes folks think of practice as a policy, and you see that too often.
I have a quick question follow-up for that. This practice of criminalizing just normal youthful behavior, is that usually, I mean, in your experience, is that usually a practice school by school, or is that usually a policy in reality? What has your experience been with this?
What I see is it'd be more of a black and brown thing. Folks don't know how to relate. So that child or youth acting out may be seen as criminal or demonizing. So folks tend to handle it with criminal sanctions instead of, you know, handling it within the school. Some of the simple is when I was growing up, I got into several fights in school. I'm sorry, I got into several fights. Just being in the community I was raised in, so you had to be tougher than a $2 steak, or if not, you know, people would run over you. But in those fights, I never got expelled. But nowadays, if you get in a simple fist fight, you can get expelled from school. Instead of handling it within school in a community type circle, restorative type circle, it's things as simple as that. Just being a class clown can get you suspended nowadays and out of school. So, and especially if you're black or brown. So, Kevin, there's so many things that's systemically wrong. We can talk all night.
Right. Yeah, I get
Dr.
you.
Moss, there's a couple questions here for you as well. It says you create the same issue if BIPOC teachers aren't able quote unquote qualified to teach, it'll be hard for BIPOC youth to have those BIPOC teachers to look up to. So what do you do then? I know I can speak for probably Rich, you and myself, and a lot of other people of color on this panel. How many teachers did you have that were of color? I had zero. I'm 40 years old. I had zero. So this question, it speaks to that. How do you look up to somebody when you never see it? You don't see that at school.
It's tough. That's why I think it's so hard to. I mean, the teacher union is strong. I hope no teachers not on here, but I'm not trying to offend nobody. But the teacher union is strong. They're not willing. I don't know if they're willing to let some of them barriers down and say, hey, if you just got a 4-year degree, come and teach. I mean, I was teaching at the college level with just a master's. I mean, I don't know. It's just a lot of barriers up to keep folks of color from getting to school teaching. I think I keep on going back to credible messengers, but I think in these credible messengers in these schools, these young people can see people that look like them that's successful, who maybe have a little hiccup on their record as well. So that could be a quick fix to a harder problem.
Thank you.
Getting mentors in the school that look like these students, especially when that school is lacking color in it.
This question is from Stephanie K. She was also one of our presenters. So hello, Stephanie, and thank you for joining us again. Her question is, do you think criminalizing normal childhood behavior is increasing? And if so, why?
I think a lot of times you see with this, it really started with the super predator stage in criminal justice system, early 90s, the Central Park Five. You've seen people starting to really criminalize youth behavior, and it's been slow to change. Just like with any type of policy and practice, it's really slow to change, and now it's a lot of tough on crime type of stuff's going on as well before the civil unrest. But I think since the civil unrest, folks are more enlightened to try to make changes quick because they've seen the power of youth and folks of color when they raise up. So I think, just this momentum we have in the form of hope right now need to change some momentum in the form of policy change and legislative changes and law changes. So
I was also just going to comment that not only do we see, less teachers of color, but in particular, we see less men of color, period. I know that the higher I went with my education, I saw, there were more women of color than men usually. So I think that's a piece that's missing.
You're 100% right. Even me going through school, if I wasn't playing basketball and had those black men in my life that looked like me, that helped me, push me, I could have went easily down the other path, or the mentors early on in my life that kind of showed me a different way. I was fortunate. So I always try to reach back and do the same thing, but we need more people in schools like that because folks don't understand how big of a role sports play in a child's life, especially, moving forward. Like myself, I went to college if I wasn't playing basketball because that's the only reason I wanted to go to school was to play basketball. I thought I was going to the NBA. So that didn't happen. So I said I was going to go professional in my other career. So, I took that same hard work and translated it to what I do today. But it's still, coaches, mentors is so pivotal in these youth lives that we need to make sure we keep them surrounded by them.
Hi, Dr. Moss. So a question I had was, because we have a lot of we have a very less diverse, teachers right now. What are some impactful practices that these teachers can learn, or some advice for our teachers to better handle situations in the future regarding the prison pipeline and situations like this on their everyday life and situations now?
I appreciate you asking that question. I think one thing they can start, just make Black History Month every month. American history is Black history and vice versa, I think. And then bringing folks in monthly or bi-weekly to, especially that kids of color in the school, speak to their culture. Reach out. There's plenty of people in the community who would love to come in and speak to kids, or, even with some of these electives, they can have electives based around different cultures and cultural practices, culturally specific, electives. I know it's all type of weird electives. I don't know what's going on in high school now, but it's a lot of things you can do, and a lot of folks you can lean on the community. They don't have to do all the changes themselves. Just work with community. If you lift community up, they can give you answers. You just got to let them in and open the door for them.
Ms. Thomas, I have volunteered to come to Shakopee High School on numerous occasions to talk about any subject that they want me to talk about because of my knowledge and background. And I have yet to been taken up on any of those offers. And I've been in this community for 3.5 years now.
I'll try to reach out to my teachers and let them know.
You know, and on that same note, another opportunity, especially for the younger primary grades, if you are not getting necessarily people to come in and teach about their culture, but to even just come in and read books so that their faces are seen and they know they make a connection is a really great opportunity for that.
Actually, I have a comment on this, but a couple years ago, I think in 9th grade or 10th grade, I was a part of LEAD, which is the Shakopee High School's Diversity Club. And something that we do every year, or I don't know if we did it this year, but is that we would go to elementary schools and read books about diversity, or so we kind of introduced this new idea to elementary kids, and they all really respond positively with lots of good feedback. So I think maybe if we did more of that at a younger age, they'll see how normal diversity is and start to appreciate and, you know, see that this is nothing new and start to live with it.
Any questions from any educators on the Zoom? I love to converse about anything you guys thinking about.
And for those that don't know, there's a little raise your hand icon at the bottom if you just hover. So you just click on that and then Heidi will unmute you to be able to ask your question. We really did, you know, put this together for you guys. So any questions, we'd love them.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and ask Jack to unmute himself. He has something he'd like to ask.
Yeah, I just had a question. So I'm a 8th grade global studies teacher, and I'm part of our district equity leadership team. I just had a question on when you said get rid of school resource officers as an option. Oftentimes I get this pushback from my friends or colleagues, right, that in terms of school shootings, right, and we haven't talked about them a lot this year because we haven't been in the buildings, right, so we haven't really had them. But that's often what they bring back up is like, well, what do we do in that scenario? So what would your suggestion be if we don't have, you know, a school resource officer or cop in the classroom or the school itself?
I mean, I feel like, that's unfortunate if ever a school shooting happened. I just think they should be near the school or on call at all times, but just their presence in the school daily, I don't believe it's needed. And just so much trauma come from that uniform. That black and brown youth don't want to be traumatized every day by seeing that uniform. I think you can get more out of a youth of color if you just got people in the school that look like them that can help them out with their daily problems. I don't know no person that's going through anything that's going to go to a cop. In some cases, they will go to a cop and express, hey, I'm going through this at home today. But for the most part, they're not. But they're more likely to go to that social worker, that credible messenger that looks like them and speak to them before they get that day started in school so they can, de-escalate some of those situations. I just think less of a police presence in the school is the best way to go about it, just from being a person of color and never, having no good experience with a cop until I got older. But that's not everybody's experience, but it's the majority of black folks' experience and black and brown folks. I just think if we can have them in the school, but maybe just a less presence, somewhere near, close by. Like you said, you always got to prepare for the worst. But I just don't think their presence daily in there is needed. And I know some people feel differently. Folks go back and forth all day, but that's me personally. And just by me working in the justice system for the last 18 years, I've seen more harm come from school resource officers than I've seen help.
Dr. Moss, we have a comment from Andrea. She wanted to just draw attention to the point about a school resource officer. She just said, I'm not sure the data really shows that a school resource officer actually deters school shootings, which honestly, I tend to agree with her. I don't know I don't have any factual data to back that up, but I do tend to agree with that statement.
Yeah, I believe that's factual. But I know some data out there, and I wish I'd have brought it up. Had it with me. The likelihood of a school shooting is almost like hitting the Mega Millions. So,
Hey, Dr. Moss, I wanted to give a little explanation about school resource officers. The goal for a school resource officer is to be able to provide security or a safe environment. That does not mean that you cannot have a safe environment without a school resource officer, because the school just needs to think outside the box in their particular location, versus whether it's security guards who are known throughout the community. If it's a community of color, you have people who look like them providing security, and they know them within their neighborhood. That is a very easy solution, and it's often pretty less expensive than having an SRO assigned to your school. And if you do need to have an SRO I think it's more for the teacher's benefit than for the students, then maybe that this SRO needs to be dressed down, in a sense, not in uniform, wearing maybe a coat or tie or something where they don't visibly have to show their utility belt or their duty belt on them. And also being mixing with the students as I like to say, as, hey, I'm here to talk to you or help you. Just let me know if you need any help. And that's it. That should be about the extent of that, and not being aggressive as well.
and to piggyback off what you said too, Rich, I think people get confused about the defund the police movement. I think when you say defund the police, that's not getting rid of police. It's just taking a lot of that money you giving to the police departments and pushing it upstream. And I think the same thing can happen with getting rid of SROs. It costs a lot of money to keep cops in the school. It's not cheap. But if you take those same resources that you provide for a salary and push them upstream, a lot more stuff can be done. When I say upstream, it's just pushing that money towards preventive measures, being proactive, early education, STEM type of education, trade schools. School's not for everybody, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of things you can do with money that you would invest in SROs that you can do to invest in the child education.
Dr. Moss, I have a question, and I'm sure that you can speak to this. I know you touched on it just a little bit, and maybe this is for Rich to answer as well. Specifically discussing Black trauma and how it relates to law enforcement officers, because we're also discussing this in school. So we're talking about the trauma of a uniform, and then you're seeing it in school. So can you both, or either one of you, speak to that Black trauma and really, maybe for our audience especially, address what that really looks like for these students?
Rich, you definitely can follow up. It's hard. I'm a father of 6, and I got two teenage sons. Well, young adults, one 21, the other 20, and it's a little different. Just by me being a law enforcement, I have to tell them how to handle themselves. When encountered by law enforcement agency, it's hard. You never know if you can get shot. That's a real reality for people of color. When you get pulled over, you got to know your rights, but then you still got to be calm enough to make sure you de-escalate the situation, not to get somebody elevated to a point where they want to pull their gun out. It's been situations, as I was growing up, I was pulled over for being profiled, had guns pulled on me. Even now, I work downtown. I walk through the Skyway. I'm a big brother. I'm like 6 feet, 250. So, white women tend to tuck their purse and walk the other way. And, I tend to get police attention. I got a lot of tattoos. You couldn't see it now, but ton of tattoos. It's stereotypes, and it's a lot to play into it. But then having to deal with that in the community, but then go to school and see that same presence, it's a lot, and it's traumatic. And it's fight or flight. Even the youth I was working with at some of these level 4 schools, it's just a constant confrontation between the cops and them in the school every day, because that's how they feel like they got to be approached. They deal with it in the community, especially coming from poverty. Communities with less resources over police. So you're seeing them same cops every day throw people on the ground. Pretextual stops, pulling people over for BS. Then you have to go to school and deal with the same thing. So it's just a lot. It needs to be a culture shift, and I think it can start with, just putting more resources upstream. Rich?
And as for me, I have a little bit of a different take, in a sense that in this community, I've been pulled over at least 6 times, and we're talking about either by state, Shakopee, and county. and I've been pulled over, and I get a little bit of different respect because when they run my tags or even my license, it shows up that I'm part of law enforcement. And then that's when I get treated different once they find that out. And then I have never received a ticket or anything like that. And most of the time I just get, hey, I'm sorry. And they just say, and they walk away. So that's because of me, who I am. And I can only imagine what other people in the community probably don't get that same respect that I get. So I would caution people that you have to understand that people do have to be taught different, not just our police, but our children as well, that how you need to react when you're pulled over by a police. Unfortunately, that's what the reality is because you don't want to see your child hurt if they're a person of color. So you need to educate them about how to react, what to say and what not to say. You also have to help them understand the respect that they may not get, but they still have to give. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow for kids these days, is that, hey, I need to respect this person authority, even though I'm not being given that same level of respect. And then if they have an issue with it, then they should have each community or even in schools should have some way for a student to address their concerns about the respect that they're either not given or feel they're not given by their teacher or counselor, or it doesn't matter who it is, because if they can have some way that they feel that they can address these situations, it will help de-escalate it in the future.
Thanks, Rich. I think Stephanie made a great comment. She says it's important to mention that school shootings are usually done in predominantly white schools by white kids, unfortunately. That's a fact too. I appreciate you mentioning that. The other thing too, I think folks need to learn and understand is don't discount lived experience. Bring authentic community to the table and help and working side by side with them. What I see a lot of times in these systems is that the strong community-based organizations or the strong nonprofit with a huge grant writing machine is the folks at the table, but not those authentic community folks who actually experience a lot of the issues. So you got to open up the door for them and give them a seat at the table. Also, what I see a lot of times too in some of these educational calls is that I see the student who does real good, who got straight A's, who gets along with all the administrators. I never see the student who has maybe a D average or maybe, going through something. They never shine a light on that student, let them speak his truth or his or her truth. And I think too often we need to give them a seat at the table, listen to them and let them inform us on some of our decisions. We can't make decisions from our mountaintops. Lived experience is the best experience. And so those folks who live through it, let's listen to them and work together. We can't share power. We have to give power back to community. And that's too often we give community a fake perception of we giving them power. No, I mean, we sharing power. We need to give power back to them and help them make decisions.
It would be really great if the county or the cities would look into the credible messenger model. And I can tell you that kind of developed over an old time program that Ray knows what I'm going to say. It's called the Scared Straight program. And I am a graduate of the Scared Straight program, and they don't have that anymore. But back in the day, that's how you dealt with kids, hard-headed kids.
It's definitely I say it's a super upgrade from Scared Straight.
Yes.
But Scared Straight had its time and a place. But I know like boot camps and stuff was shown not to work.
Yeah.
But Scared Straight is, I can see where you're coming from. But yeah, Credible Messengers is definitely brothers and sisters with lived experience who may be just as involved, who can, want to get back and help out and be mentors, who change their life around, work and educate, and definitely want to come back and reach back and help young folks out.
So we are at 8:10. I'm curious if anyone has any more questions. Otherwise, we'll start to wrap up here.
Wanda? Wanda asked, what about Boys and Girls Club? I don't know if you're speaking more to the YMCA or Boys and Girls Clubs in general. I don't think a lot of them open. And then folks I know that look like me or might be brown really don't have great experience with YMCAs, but local rec centers, yes, in their community, but not far as YMCAs goes. But Boys and Girls Club, I'm new to the area. I've been here for the last almost 3 years, so I'm not really familiar with any in the community. I mean, for mentors for kids. It's not a lot. It's not a lot of mentors out there. It's always a lack of mentorship that we need. But like I said, these folks want to come to the table, but it's hard, especially if you're Black and brown, to step away from something and dedicate so much time because you always got a family to worry about. So we need to incentivize a lot of these mentors and make sure they stay at the table and can come to the table.
Dr. Moss, I do have a person who has their hand raised. It looks like they might already be unmuted. If you want to go ahead, Wanda, and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for an opportunity to ask a question. You know, we talked a little bit about ethnic studies classes, and I'm wondering, I know that in Minneapolis, they are making that a graduation requirement moving forward. I'd just like to know some of your thoughts around having that be a graduation course. I just want to hear what you have to say about that.
I think it's super dope, and I think it needs to be more than just. Is it just one elective, or is it just one class, or is it what is it exactly?
I believe it's going to be like one semester class. I'm not 100% sure, and some of the schools can offer like some of the high schools in Minneapolis already offer different ethnic history classes. Whether it's Latino studies or African American or Native American, but now it's becoming a requirement. So again, I believe it's going to be a one semester class for graduation. And I just wanted to know your thoughts around that.
I think it's great, but I think it should just be more than one semester. I think a lot of classes that we teach our youth and young folks is not really needed. We can uplift these cultural study classes and in place of things that they may never use, but you know, they need to learn about their culture. You know, Native folks, Hmong folks, Latinx folks, Black folks, they always want to learn more about their culture. And we can, you know, get that going at an early age, you know, elementary, going into middle school, maybe it's a requirement every step of the way, you know, they get some type of culturally specific education just to be proud of their people and you know, and understand exactly where they come from. So I think it's super dope, and I think it's a great stepping stone, hopefully, to more classes just like that.
Great. I agree. So thank you.
But the only thing is, I hope it's a person of color actually teaching that class. I hope
in the class. Yeah.
Okay.
I hear you. I mean, I don't know, but I hear what you're saying. Yes, and I agree.
Dr. Moss, there's a comment too. I'm sure you can see it. It's part of all classes. It includes in all courses like math. We'll incorporate ethnic studies, talking about contributions of the BIPOC community has made, but then also class alone. So I'm assuming this is an answer to Wanda's question.
I did get a question directed to CEU credits from teachers. And so before all the teachers hang up, I do want you to know I do have a CEU opportunity if you want to. There is our contact information, Black History at ShakopeeDiversityAlliance.org. If you want to shoot me an email there, I will attach a PDF CEU for you.
And if we had time, like I said before, folks, please feel free to reach out to me, email me, text me. If you got any questions about mentors or we just want to have a conversation, you know, if you want to make each other feel uncomfortable, I'm down for that too. Because like I say, growth always comes from uncomfortable conversations. You're only going to be able to learn. And like I said, I'm here just to help out and, you know, any way possible. So feel free to reach out to me.
I just want to tell everyone on my team, thank you so much. You're not just my team, it's our team. I really appreciate all you've done. For all you participants, thank you for joining us. Dr. Moss, huge thank you. And you and Rich and I will be having a conversation about allyship because that gets real uncomfortable real quick. So we will be talking in the future. Just thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And please join us for our next presentation next Monday on homelessness and racism. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Here, bye-bye.
Thank you.